I'm not sure. Are we seeing? Can you guys see my slides? Yes.
Yeah. They can. That's fine. They confirmed.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful then. So welcome everyone. We're ready to start then. So this is the first this is edition 1 of Python Ireland's remote meetup. We are happy to have you all here. So we have 25 people in. Welcome everyone. So please, if you have any questions for us, if you want to tell us anything, if you'd like to just drop a hello, please just say hello in the chat. We're more than happy to say hello back and to keep this conversation going. So let's start then. Well, after the chat, if you want to say hello to us, I would advise you to just scan this QR code and leave us a message on Telegram as well. It'll be amazing to have a chat with you. We're wondering beforehand, me and Emmanuel here, where are you guys from? All your people there just here with us. Where say hello to us. I would love to know where you're from. Perfect. So we're walking into the plan for today. So we started a little bit late, but we're going. And so I'm just gonna give you a few general news about the community and about Python in general. Then we're gonna start with Emmanuel here with a lovely talk for us about the gentle touch of APM. Then we're gonna have a little bit of time for Q&A as well. Then after that, I would love if everyone, I'm gonna put the link for lightning talks for you to submit your lightning talk very soon. And please, yes, just join us. I would love to hear you all, please. And then if there's nothing else, we're gonna close this session. So yes, let's start. So for the did you know part, we're talking about Grace Hopper today. So I don't know if you guys know it, but apart from the fact that she was the inventor of the bug term, she is also the inventor of COBOL, which that lovely programming language that is very used in business. And that 60 years later, that was in 1959, and then 60 years later brought us to this, the crisis on COBOL programmers to deliver unemployment checks in the US. So yeah, that's the Did You Know for today. Then announcements time. We have, yes, due to the circumstances, we are not going to be able to confirm any physical events for 2020, except for PyCon that is happening in November. It's still happening in November. We're not able to confirm any other ones, but there's good news as well. Python Ireland is now it's now happening every second week. So instead of seeing us once, you're gonna see us twice a month now. And our next event then is gonna happen on the 22nd of April. And well, I hope to see you guys there. Well, thank you very much. I should have said this beforehand, but thank you very much for the guys at Terminus DB for hosting us. Thank you very much for Chuck for facilitating all this to us. We're very grateful. Thank you. Thank you everyone in the community. Thank you very much for everyone that is here as well. Then for next news, we have, yes, EuroPyCon. So EuroPyCon is also going online exclusively. The dates are there, so 23rd to 26th. They also extended their call for proposals for more 3 weeks. So everything is extended until the 12th of April. I advise you guys to submit. It's a lovely opportunity to just talk and present your talks, and yes, just join the community. It's an amazing community. Then after this, I would love to say also a very special congratulations to our director, Kevin O'Brien, on becoming a fellow of the PSF. That happened a few weeks ago, and we're very, very happy to have you as our director. We're very happy to work with you. So
So
congratulations again.
thank you, Lace. Just an update for me that like I successfully hooked up this meeting to Twitch. So I have also shared the link there. So if any of you want to, want to switch to Twitch because the audio or whatever that you prefer Twitch, you're welcome to. And I gotta also share it on social media as well.
So thank you very much, Chuck. You see, we're everywhere now.
Right.
Perfect. And then as last announcement, I just would like to tell you guys that I will be in Pi Amsterdam tomorrow. I'm going to be giving a talk on newbies are not nobody. How can you contribute to the community even if you're new? So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with Python Ireland and about Python in general. So join us, please. And then, no longer further, we are going to welcome Emmanuel Tolev with his talk on the gentle touch of APM, how code tracking works in Python. Welcome, Emmanuel.
Thank you. Very glad to be here. So let's, without further ado, I'll jump straight in. Let me share. So can you stop sharing your screen, Lice, so that it lets me do excellent. All right, there we go. Fantastic, right, all good. So my name is Emmanuel, and I work at Elastic, the makers of Elasticsearch, Kibana, Logstash, Beats, and various other open source projects. So Elastic, in case you haven't heard of us, it's a company that deals a lot with monitoring, and today the topic is related, monitoring the performance of web apps. So let's see what APM is. Oh, by the way, I'm in, I live in London, but I really love Dublin and I love other parts of Ireland. Like I've been to Galway as well. Like I really envy you people who live in, it's just so beautiful. Shannon is good as well. I really need to go and visit the northern parts. That's maybe a topic for after. So the idea here with application performance monitoring, just to give you a quick overview of, why might we even want, why do we need anything beyond, like looking at logs? So before APM, typically the journey that most web devs take is they'll look at the textual output of their apps, so logging, and they might look at metrics. This is the journey that I took as well. Like when I first started putting web applications on the web, which was a long time ago now. Well, too long. But what you start with usually is you'll have maybe one machine and then you'll have everything on it. You'll have a data store and you'll have a web application, the actual one running, and you might have a web proxy of some kind, or like a web server like Apache, or a proxy like Nginx. And they all have a log. And so, when something breaks, you can go in and you have a look and read the log and see what's gone wrong. Except, of course, that then you have to scale that out at some point. You maybe want them to be redundant, and you end up with multiple containers or servers, VMs, sorry, virtual machines, that all have software that has logs. And so what happens is, what I've ended up in myself doing is I had to at one point log into 6 different virtual machines just to look at Elasticsearch nodes and their individual logs. At that point, you start thinking, well, what can we do here to make this a bit easier? And so what I did was I just copied the logs all to my local machine. So in a way, that was centralization. But for over 20 years now, there have been better approaches, such as the one on the screen. So there's an old venerable project called Nagios, which allows you to centralize the collection of both logging and metrics. And there's others like Isenga, there's another one. And there's so many nowadays. Elastic is a company that makes some software for that. But the point here is that at some point, like the way I think of it, you start with, you run the web app, and then what happens, right? You have a need for information. And so the need is like here. And you want to know, well, what, there's an error on the screen. There's a 500. You can't show it to the users because of safety concerns, that you don't want to show them internal info and so on. But you also don't want to confuse them because this technical information, shouldn't be seen by random users who have no technical background. It'll just confuse them, scare them. Okay, right, so what do we need then? We need a place elsewhere, not the browser, to output this information. So you start outputting it to a log. Fine. Now let's say that the web app becomes sluggish and just like regularly you have some kind of problem with it. Often the culprit will be resources contention. So you have to go and look at CPU contention or RAM contention. So this something is being too full or is being used too much. We want to go and see. Right. So now so we're here. We've answered that question with logging, and now we've raised the bar again, right? And we have more need for information because we want to diagnose a more complex problem. And so we've answered that with metrics. So with APM is we want further information. And my personal story with that is that there was a time when I tried only using logs and metrics to solve a particular problem. A website of a client of mine was falling over regularly. It's about every 5 to 6 hours, including during the night. And so over the course of 4 days, I tried solving this with logs and metrics. It was very painful. And so instead, what we ended up doing finally was installing an APM system. I wasn't Elastic APM, wasn't released back then. It was New Relic. And that really helped us see a lot more quickly what was going wrong, where exactly was it going wrong. So with logs and metrics, it's still a black box. Like it's still what happens in the app itself is still a black box view. And so that's hence the need for APM. So we're going to talk, obviously we're going to show you APM and so on. But just to give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you actually APM, like Elastic APM, just the user interface. Then we'll dive into like, why do we even have web frameworks in Python? And you'll see why that's relevant in a bit. Because basically an APM system, in order to give you this white box view of what exactly is going on in an app, it needs to hook like all the way down in order to, well, trace the stack trace. So it's sort of useful to know a bit about web frameworks. And then we'll have a look at the actual Elastic APM code, because our agents are open source, as well as actually the server that collects information. So it's all on GitHub, where you can see all of this info and learn how it works in depth. So I'll walk you through like how it works. It's actually probably simpler than you might expect. Then we're gonna have a look at visualizing traces. So I don't think I'll have time, it's judging by my prep for this talk, for looking at exactly how they're visualized. I'm already gonna give you a lot of tech detail. We're just the visualizing will be okay, right? That's what that looks like. It's just the end product, rather than exactly how it's done. And then we're gonna have a look at benchmarks and how we avoid causing a hit to performance, which is again surprisingly simple actually. Right, so general, if you haven't heard of the Elastic Stack before, Elasticsearch is an open source search engine. You can use it for a lot of things, lots of numbers, lots of text, geographic information and search. So because of that, it was difficult to come up with, okay, well, how do we make money out of this open source project? So there's a particular use case. Well, why don't we let people put in lots of monitoring data, like from web apps, because everybody needs that. And then hopefully we'll build some stuff that they're happy to pay us for. So this is, by now, Elastic has gone into security and mapping and tons of other commercial areas, but monitoring is still a big one. So that's the stack. So today, this is the main projects, and today we're going to talk about one that sort of fits alongside those. Kibana is the graphical UI we'll be looking at. Elasticsearch is the underlying data store where all the data goes that we're going to talk about. And this is the only two we're going to concern ourselves with. Okay, so APM that sort of fits alongside that. Whereas like Beats and Logstash, they're for log processing and for metrics, so what we talked about earlier. APM as software that sits alongside that. So you have an agent that you install in your app, sends information to a server, and that server processes the information, does some correlations, sends the data over to Elasticsearch, and Kibana reads the data from Elasticsearch in order to display it to you. That's the overall architecture. So that's quite vague though, and technical people, so let's talk more concretely. So this is how you do it in like a specific app. And I'll show you one a bit later. So here we have a data store, we have a backend that will typically have a front end. And so here is the agent as installed in the backend, and respectively the RUM, real user monitoring agent, as installed in the front end. I'm going to say we started at 40 past, like the talk, and just to keep track on time. All right, so the agent and the client-side agent just send their information to the server, and it goes to Elasticsearch, is read by Kibana. So let's have a look then at the APM user interface. So 1 second. That's the wrong tab, but Zoom has conveniently positioned itself. There you go. In the wrong place. Okay. Right, so that's kind of a full spread of what you'd see in production. That's a demo that we keep. So this is quite typical of APM systems. If you use New Relic or Datadog or Elastic APM, you've seen stuff like this. So the most important things here, you have throughput, transactions per minute, and you have the duration of transactions. The fairly obvious here, the thing tries to tell you where you might have a problem, hence the red shading. Important concept here, I'll turn these two off. So here, look at that. On average, the transactions take 369, I should zoom in a bit, 369 milliseconds. But 95th percentile, right? So you can see the top of the graph here is 2.4, and that's your average. When you turn on the 95th percentile, the top of the graph becomes 14 seconds. And that's quite close to 99. So the idea here is that those are samples. So the average, because you've got lots of fast transactions generally in a web app, the average might not show you like a good representation of what the users are feeling. And so the idea is that 95th and 99 tell you what 95% of your users, 99 respectively, how your site might feel to them. And that does that by selectively sampling transactions. So basically sampling is, or the way we do it is we'll look at what are slower transactions and we'll try to track them more and to take them more into account statistically. And so that's how we come up with that. Then you've got a list of transactions and the potential impact on your website. We have a look at a particular one. So this is the other thing APM systems are really famous for. If you haven't seen one, that's a breakdown of a transaction. So I'm just actually going to quickly also check chat. That. All right, okay. So here we've got the breakdown of a transaction, and you can see that there's a full stack trace, and like each function has sort of its own block, and including SQL queries. So, and this particular demo is a Java app, and we'll see a Python one as well. So we've got the some line, like which line of the code issued the query. Yeah, so the different colors here are also worth noting. So you got different services, and this is called distributed tracing. So the request filters from the front end. So here you see it says React and blue, through to the backend, which is JavaScript and Cyan, and then through to a further backend service, which is Spring, which is a Java web framework. Right? So the request is tagged by the JavaScript APM client, and then the other APM clients kind of preserve the tag and pass it on and tag it themselves. And so then when the information reaches the server, this is correlated together. And then when Kibana, which is what I'm looking at, displays it, it shows it to you in different colors. So distributed tracing is pretty cool. So any service-oriented or microservices architecture, obviously extremely useful to be able to see such a detail. Excellent. Okay, so that's a general gist with like what an APM system is, just so that you've seen one. And bear with me. I'll try to keep this talk on the brief side, but it is the first time I'm giving it, so all right. So web frameworks. What's the use of them? What have web frameworks ever done for us? What has the EU ever done for us? The idea here is that there's a lot of boilerplate stuff, URL routing, input forms, database connection management, object ORM means object relational mapping. There's just so much stuff that every web app needs to do when it wants to talk to other services or a database. So it's just not if every dev had to do all of that themselves, we wouldn't get anywhere. So that's their function, then that's how we all know them. But in particular here, I want to call out something else. In doing these abstractions, there's two further things that they kind of use in order to achieve these abstractions. One of them is middleware functionality. And middleware is the support basically for code modules that are loaded and that execute for each request. And you can probably see where this is going with application performance monitoring, because if we execute for each request, then we can use that to trace each request or to do something else to each request. And something that's probably useful to know, as you can't really talk the web server gateway interface, which is sort of a language or protocol that's specific to well, it was specific to Python apps, maybe not anymore. And the idea here, go on next slide. The idea here is that they had like all of these frameworks, and so they all needed a way to get their HTTP data out there. In the beginning, there was an Apache module called ModPython, but that was just one specific implementation. So now if you've used other web servers, we have Green Unicorn, we have Micro, WSGI, we continue to have Apache, so there's a lot of them. And so between all of the web frameworks and all the web servers, it became a bit of an explosion of possibilities to talk. And so that's why WSGI was born. The idea there is that WSGI pod basically deals with the scaling and the low level, like talking to the browser and so on. Whereas we, in monitoring, we live in the web server pod, right? So our app is taken, it's a Flask app, for example, the app object is taken and given to Green Unicorn or whatever other WSGI compatible server you might have. And that deals with scaling and other low level stuff. We just deal with the business logic. Well, that's the idea. Yeah, so this is a bit of a more philosophical slide on how we even came up with web frameworks, but we're going to skip that in the interest of time. So APM itself, right? So the idea here is that you have these agents, they send this information to server, then gets visualized. It's pretty much the same for a basic structure for all the vendors that are in the APM space. Typically, they live inside your application. So usually they'd be a dependency or at most a wrapper around it. So they would live on the web server part, right? So the WSGI server will take the APM part, which might wrap around your web app, and will run with that. Or if the APM agent is a dependency, then there's just like, well, it's just a library. Okay, so they need to be language and usually framework specific. Otherwise, you need to do a lot of custom stuff. They collect performance data, obviously, as you saw. And they also collect errors. That is something that you should see. So here is an example. I love this because it's, even if you already have logging, it's a great like extra addition. And if you don't have good logging set up, it's amazing. So basically, it groups your errors. So if a same error repeats, in a log, you just see it tons of times with all the stack trace. So if this stack trace is like 20 lines long, then I'd be seeing like nearly 700, it'd be 740 lines of logs. But instead here, I just see like one line on the APM display, and there's this many occurrences because they're grouped by the error. So that's and all of the vendors that I know of have this ability. So it's excellent. Like I would recommend just putting, if you don't have an APM, just putting one just for that. Like you don't even have to look at the performance. If you're only using logging and metrics, just install one. Yeah. Also, yeah, I should probably mention Elastic APM is free, so you can open it. Obviously, being server and agents being open source. The UI is not open source, but it is free to use without any limitations. And there's no trial, nothing. You can download all of the stuff, including Elasticsearch, Kibana, run it yourselves, or on Elastic Cloud. You can also offload like basically the processing and the maintenance of running the software to us for a bit of money. And then you just send us the data. You just install the agents. Yeah, and the other thing about APM agents is they need to have no overhead or little overhead on production, because otherwise people get pretty angry when they're serving 1 million requests and you slow them down by 35%. It's a problem. So you need to avoid doing that. All right, so what you saw, so think back to the colorful blocks. What you saw there are spans and transactions. So every operation that we trace as a span, and every transaction contains multiple spans. So like, for example, here, this update owner route, right? That would be a route, and inside it, like each request to that route will be a transaction. So here, this blue line, that's a transaction. Then that calls another service, that's also a transaction. See the two arrows that are facing each other, that denotes a transaction. Then that transaction has a span, which is just one bit of it, which is a put request to yet another backend service, which causes a transaction in that backend service. And then that transaction, you have more spans. So here, you've got a function, validate zip code, and after that, it executes update owner, and that executes find owner by ID, and that executes a ton of queries. So that's the basic terminology, transactions and spans. And as you can see, there's different types. You have SQL or just application code, all kinds of spans. All right, so basically the way they work is they'll wrap around each transaction and they'll measure the time spent on there. And then they'll hook specifically into the language itself and the framework. And now I want to show you how. So we're gonna look at Flask and Celery examples. 25 minutes. Yeah, okay, should be okay. This is really the meat of it. Right, okay, so let's make sure I'm looking at the right stuff. Contract, right, there we are. Okay, so I'm looking at the Elastic APM code base. This is on GitHub. I think I didn't put it on the slides themselves, but I will put them on the last slide before I send you all the slides. So you can read this stuff yourself. Quite interesting, actually, if you want to level up a bit as a Python dev, and you want to see how web servers work and how stuff is measured. That's quite a good idea. Let me make sure you can read that. Okay. So this is the Elastic APM Python agent Flask integration. So that's how it's built. The agent has general measurement functions that have to be invoked specifically. And then for each framework, well, the respective module invokes those functions. Okay, some boilerplate stuff, creating stuff, and so on. All right, so handle exception. You know how we group the errors? There, you said 37 occurrences of whatever error. That's how that works. Right, so that's what you saw on the screen as this function. That gets called. Here we got the captured body, and that just sets it in errors. That can also put it in the headers. So, like the actual HTTP headers, they're being passed from service to service. And that's how you can, say you had a JavaScript exception, but then how do you capture that info along the way so that it eventually makes it all the way back to the APM server. It's useful to put it in the headers. Right, so that's how errors get done. Right, and there are the hooks. Okay, actually, just make sure that I tell you. There it is, yeah. So I want to, I don't want to just show you what the Elastic APM code is. I want to show you how it hooks into the web framework. So this signals thing, right? That's the mechanism that Flask provides for us. So you can do that yourself. So you could write something like this that does something on every request. There's probably better ways of doing that in Flask, but if you particularly wanted to, it is possible. That's your hook. So that's how it actually works. So you say, on the request started signal that's issued by the framework, we want to connect our request started function, and the request finished, we have our own request finished function. And we also try to load to the Celery integration in case you're using Flask with Celery. And then furthermore, this is for the real user agent monitoring. So basically, if there are IDs coming back from JavaScript into Python, this just makes sure that they're preserved. So there's a tiny bit of code to do that and preserve the information. Okay. So then here we've got the actual, so that's our code. That's Elastic APM now. I mean, all of this is really, but this is sort of the meat of it, I guess. That's the bit that produces the little blue blocks and so forth that you see. Am I getting on time? I guess. Okay, excellent. Oh no, I got on. Oh Jesus. Okay, yeah. So 30 minutes. Yeah, first time giving a talk about this. I'll hurry it up. All right. So here, the begin transaction is from there. Capture that. On we go. So then eventually we just let Flask run. And the Flask calls it when it's done processing the request. producing the HTML, doing the calls that it needs to do to the database, and all of that, all of your logic, its logic, and all that afterwards. Okay, and this function extracts the data from the response. Right. So that's that part. Now, Celery is simpler. Don't worry, it won't take very long. There it is. Right. So in Celery, similar stuff. You have exception tracking. So basically, is your background task erroring out? Is your batch job erroring out? Very similar mechanism that Celery provides as well. They've also called it signals. So just call, right, so register worker signals is our own function. And these are the actual like Celery function names: worker startup, worker shutdown, and connect worker processes in it. And this is all of it, actually. So even if you're using a framework that we don't support, it's not that hard to add it. It will probably take you a while just because of getting yourself familiarized. But if you want just basic tracking, look at this module, is less than 100 lines. And you get this pretty colorful stuff automatically. So you just literally install it. And I'll quickly show you how that, literally how do you use it so that you've got some idea. So you just put this dependency in, Elastic APM, in this case it's a Flask app, so I want extra, please, Flask support, if you please. Literally 2 settings, the name that you wanted to turn up as on the Kibana UI that I was showing you, and the server, so where we're sending the events, and then this wrapper around the Flask app object. That's it. So you have that, you do Flask run, or you give this this app object to Gunicorn, you do your usual integration for running your app, and that you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to like go note specific functions, whatever, none of that. It'll just show you that nice breakdown. Okay, I do have a question. How does it compare to Prometheus and Open Tracing? So Open Tracing is sort of a vendor collaboration project. Well, sorry, Open Telemetry is. We have Open Tracing, Open Census, which is kind of getting deprecated. Yeah, so Open Tracing is also a cross-vendor project. And then Open Telemetry is kind of the new thing. Can't see that question. So Elastic APM, we always try to stay on top of cross-vendor collaboration. So Open collabs with like Open Telemetry, Open Tracing. We try to stay on top of them. Open Telemetry is still sort of, well, draft. So we can't say we're compatible because no one is, but we try to stay on top of that. And I do have another talk where just like introduce what APMs are. And I always say, when you're picking a vendor, do pick one that's participating in cross-vendor collab, because it is important for the sector overall. Well, Prometheus, I guess, so Prometheus is it tests for all sorts of metrics. You can also do app metrics in it. There are clients that you can install and it'll do similar things. I probably don't have time to answer your question in detail, and I also don't I don't really like comparing feature to feature, though I know that that's what you'd want, because Elastic tries to build a whole platform that actually APM integrates with your logs and with your metrics. So if you're using Kubernetes, there's various integrations that you can click, and you go from APM transactions to related logs. So it's also about sort of how it clicks together. But through the vendor collab, you use the standard schema for storing the data, so you can get your data out. And of course, in reality, that's not always as easy as just saying it. Okay, right. So you've seen how to integrate it. you've seen like, the actual hooks. So this is, so, you know, like basically from here, right, from this bit, that then triggers the Flask contribution part, right? So here, that triggers these things. Started, request finished, init app. Literally that bit there where I've wrapped the Flask app object in the APM constructor. This is what that calls, right? That in turn does these requests, that does these signal registrations, and those in turn make sure that Flask will call these functions here, these two functions for start and end. And that is how we measure and extract data. That's it, from you, what you put in the app down to our level. I'd like to show you on the Flask level as well, but yeah, it will become a multi-hour lecture. All right, so onwards. So that's the main bit, that's how it works. Which I hope is interesting for you all, because I find it super fascinating actually. And you've been kept up by, you know, at night by a failing app, eventually develop a perverse interest for understanding why it's slow and how do people even figure out that it's slow. And it's actually quite clean, as you see. There's hooks, language is ready for that, the frameworks are ready. So yeah, it's a really good way to learn more about Python. So Python, so how do we do benchmarks? I gotta spend a lot of time on that. All right, so we're coming up on what, on 40, okay. So this is one way, just load, this is all public by the way. So you could, but it's probably better load testing tools, load generation tools for you folks. But we've written our own tool and Go. I show you, it should be a specific for me. Right, yeah, there it is. So that's it. I'll probably surprise you. You're like, well, this makes sure that you don't hit production performance. Yep, it does. So I'm not gonna like go through it in detail, but what I'll show you is our own docs that I meant for our devs, which should be. Yeah, this is what it does. So this you can relate to, right? I'm not just showing you random Python code that you don't have time to read. That's what it tries, and it just tries that loads of times because it is as simple as that, right? There's basic transaction types, there's errors. We are just a thin wrapper, right? If your app's slow, we're gonna measure that, but actually it's pretty thin. And okay, maybe not simple, but also not the most complex thing you've ever seen. And so that is how we avoid hitting production. And then there's also more general integration tests, which are all in this public repo, that just make sure that it all fits together. You know, so you have like client, and you have server, and you have real user monitoring, which is a different client, and you have to put it all together. Does that work? Right, coming up very much on time. Okay, questions. All right. All right. So that's it. Yeah, that's simple. That's how we do our benchmarking, because it is just a wrapper. There's nothing that magical about it. And yeah, there's other vendors that have some of their clients open source. I recommend looking at those as well. yeah, it's a bit. It's almost kind of addictive. It's a really elegant part of the stack, and you learn a lot about how like web frameworks work in general, and how all of this stuff that you're using every day works. And that's a great way to go into it, because you have the specific use case. You're not just like, oh, I'm just gonna sit here and twiddle my thumbs because I'm like filled with anxiety of whatever product feature I have to develop. I'm gonna learn how we measure, how quickly this stuff goes. That's how I feel about it. So that's the end of it. I'm gone. Yeah, 42 minutes.
That was amazing. I really, really, really enjoyed that.
All right. Well,
I
enough.
did not imagine that, because I don't have that much experience. But I struggle with log messages as well, as I think everyone kind of does. So yeah, you did get me thinking about all the log messages and all the VMs and how would you do to integrate them all. So that was amazing. That was a pretty good introduction to the subject for me anyway. So I learned a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's just, yeah, I do want to add like this stuff can also be totally useless, just like any other tool. You have like a log collection and whatever. I can be just a pretty dashboard full of graphs that nobody looks at. You, like all of you, watching, you're the people who make sure, like you're in charge. These are just tools. And what I say, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but briefly, what I'd say is, review your needs regularly. Like remember how I was talking in the beginning, you have this need, and so then we build the solution. Then you have this need, so you build that solution or install it, and etc. etc. So then you get to the third step, and you have APM or what have you. Go back to it like every 6 months and ask yourself, what problem did I have? Is it solved? Are there new problems? Is it still serving me? Right, and what else could I use?
Okay.
And you will think of compare pricing and all of that. So sorry.
So reassessment then. So reassessment is the key.
Yes, regularly reassess your monitoring. That's really the best way to keep it painless. Do it when it's not 4 days of debugging already, and you're at the end of your wits. And yeah.
Oh, wonderful! So I learned a lot. I learned. Really well, thank you very, very much. And if anyone has any further questions for Emmanuel, there's his email over there on the screen and also his Twitter handle. Thank you very much for the great talk. You see, thank you very much, Jacob, for your input. Thank you. I really enjoyed that. Any questions? Any more questions? Dun, 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 dun.
So you had a question, Prometheus Open Tracing, talked about that during talk. Well, like, there's a question, will I get the beer pint offered to every speaker? You know what, when this is over, maybe I come over to an actual session in Dublin in whatever, 6-9 months, and we'll see you all there.
We're going to be more than happy to have you here. Hopefully, like worst case scenario, can wait for you here in November, because we have PyCon happening in November. Hopefully we have something working beforehand, but there will be November. You see, there will be a pint here with your name on it. Okay. Do you drink Guinness?
Yeah, of course. It's the first beer I drank when I came to like 10 years ago, the islands. Perfect.
So you're going to feel at home then. Very good.
All right. Cheers. Well, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me, and you all stay safe. All right.
Absolutely. Yeah, stay home, guys. And thank you very much. Hope to have you here soon again. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Lice.
And then, yes, if you could just stop sharing your screen now. We're going to go into...
Here it is. All right,
it's a very small button, isn't it? Yeah, I suffered with it as well. Oh, well, perfect. Well, thank you very much. Now back to it, guys. And we have a very, very exciting lightning talks. So let's see. So who would like to start? Just 1 second. Perfect. Sorry, guys, I found it. Perfect. So Nick, if Nick would like to start, then would you please step forward, and so we can make you a panelist and you can share your slides with us? So yes, we're working into our lightning talk. So just so you guys know, lightning talks, the only request to do a lightning talk is that you have a talk that is 5 minutes long and that you fill in the form there over there in the chat. I can share the link again with you guys just in 1 second. Oh, perfect. Just 1 second. Now we're having a little bit of an issue with the. Hello. Sorry, guys. Technical issues
right,
again.
so
I hope you just.
you're waiting for me. Sorry, I was looking away.
It's
Okay,
okay. Don't worry.
just 1 second. So if okay, actually I can find you is fine. Otherwise, you have to raise your hand, but I can find you is fine. With your panelist, cool. Yep, you should. Whoa, sorry. Yeah, you should be rejoined as a panelist.
Wonderful.
Cool.
So
You're in now.
welcome, Nicholas.
I'm in.
Welcome. So this is Nicholas Lawrence, everyone. He's going to share a talk with us today showing what number is not equal to itself.
Yeah. Well, the question is, how do I share my screen again?
Technical issues. Okay.
Yeah, here it is. Here, you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing.
So there you go.
Oh, right. Tell me if it's okay.
Yes, we're seeing. Yes, we're seeing some code. Storing money in DB. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And it's okay. It's past, so 5 minutes. I try to stay into the time allocation. It's been a long time I haven't given a talk in this meetup, so it was about time. So I hope you guys enjoy our new presenter. Isn't she way better looking than I do? Eh? So now I can sit back and relax and enjoy the backseat. All right, so I had a few adventures recently, and they were not, enough to make a proper talk, but certainly enough to make a lightning talk. So what happened here is I was designing some system with a front end in JavaScript and a back end in Python, all right, that was dealing with money. So let me run that so I've learned a few things along that way. When you need to deal with a salary for money and store them in SQL DB, there is a general accepted accounting principle, and you should define your column as, yeah, I hope you're seated, a decimal 13.4. That actually makes, yes, 9 digits before the dot. So go for it. $1 billion is the standard max salary. The truth is, only few individuals need to reach that $100 million yearly salary, but there they are. So they have defined the norm. And when you play with percentage for increase and so forth, you don't need to take more than 4 decimals after the, you know, the comma. I'm French, it's a freaking comma there. So it's a dot for American people. So you see what I mean, right? Below the digit. Okay, so far so good. So you've learned one thing. Some people have crazy, crazy money. Now, what's happening now? Okay, we run that stuff. So I receive a string, which is, this is a JSON encoded object that comes from the JavaScript. It tells me, hey, here is your value, and I need to make a decimal out of that value. Okay, so what if I run that? You would expect, where is it? Run that stuff. Yeah. Here is the output. Okay, 45.23 decoded as JSON. Then I take this number and make it a decimal to match the column format in the database. And you see we have all the funkiness, so computer scientists know exactly where it comes from. If you don't know why 45.23 has been changed into this crazy number, you should keep coming to our meetups, because this makes no perfect sense, really. You know that computers have no clue how to count besides, base 2. So in any case, it's fair enough. You're missing a tenth of a millionth of a euro on your annual income. You'll survive. So far, so good. Now the problem begins when you have this. So I'll comment that. For some reason, the JavaScript widget returns a number which is none, not a number. Okay, can we JSON decode that? Yes. Can we make a decimal out of that value? Yeah. What is that decimal value? It's not a number. Brilliant. Not a number is a valid decimal. Go. Yet there is a slight problem. You will not find a single database that accepts not a number as a valid decimal value. So when you try to store that in database, kaboom, you're fried. So let's dig a bit, In my mind, not a number was a JavaScript problem, but all of a sudden I find not a number right in the middle of my Python code. So let's deal with that. What do we find here? Oops, what did I do? Dig, bang. Yeah, right, okay. So not a number, you can write it lowercase, it's lowercase. Uppercase, it's lowercase if it's a float. But whatever you do with the decimal, then it's not a number. It's not exactly the same. Ooh, and what if I try to make an integer out of a nan? Boom. Nope, not happy. So, okay. Now, the problem I have is I want to protect the transaction to my database from those weird numbers. They're valid numbers, but they are not really numbers. So, because of course they're called not a number. So what can I do? Nan, it sounds a lot like none, and of course you know that none is none. Yes, none is none. I just mentioned here for our viewers and the audience that none is also equal to none. Equal to none, but is not exactly the same thing as being equal. There is identity and there is equality. There are different relations. Now, is nan? Is it nan? Is it the same kind of singleton that we have for none? Nope. Where is it? Beep, da, boom, paf. No, it's false. Nan is not equal to nan. It's not equal to itself. It's a very special number. Shit. So how do I make sure I have nan? Well, you can pull out the big hammer. So you make a dependency on NumPy and you import it, and then you have a function That's part of the NumPy, which is okay. Is nan nan? Yes. Brilliant. You've just introduced 0.5 gigabyte of dependency into your project. Okay, maybe. Should I build a dependency on NumPy just to make one test? We'll see about that. Okay, so is nan decimal nan? No, boom! Oh, shite, it only works for floats. Oh, but I want decimal. I'm doomed. So now, okay, let's investigate a bit more about what numbers are about in our Python world. So since Python 3, and I will not even mention the idea of Python 2, believe me, I started with Python 1. So what is the max information, the max number you can use in Python? Then here we go. It's on this computer that was, I'm ashamed. This is a Windows computer. Don't record that, okay? But it has, this is the max number this machine is supposed to be able to represent. Okay. Is nan below that number? Maybe. Boom! Oh no, I don't want to play nice. I'm a decimal. I don't like nan. All right, all right. Okay, decimal, I'll make yourself a float before I compare. Oh, you're not lower than max. That's maybe because you're not a number. And then you realize, okay, maybe there are other weird numbers I didn't know about. What is decimal of inf? Well, it's decimal of infinity. It's a valid number. Really? Well, infinity is kind of a really weird number. So maybe I can make sure that my decimal nan is below infinity. Boom! Told you, I don't want to be a decimal. All right, then the only chance you have is if you message a number and it happens to be nan, nan will be the only valid number, well, valid quote, right, that is not inferior to plus infinity. Just the same, it will be the only number that is not above minus infinity. So for the sake of it, we can also play with that. You have this little guy, which is a valid number. So that was my lightning talks. I discovered there is a bunch, 3 weird numbers, minus infinity, infinity, and not a number. They managed to happily go into the world of float, partially so in the world of decimals. And when you try to compare all that stuff, well, maybe in the end, my data was already transformed into a decimal and I was not too keen to refactor my entire code base, change all my unit tests and all my stuff. And I ended up doing something like, okay, I'll convert, oops, sorry about that. I'll convert you into a float. And what I had was my my sad stuff. And I said, okay, are you slower than this guy? And it would say, I'm not. Therefore, I could do my trick and I had no longer a dependency on NumPy. This is how I get out of this trap. So that's me, guys. Any question about the weird numbers? I have no clue.
That was awesome. Well, thank you very much, Nick. Brian over there, Brian Ward on the attendees. He would like to ask you a question.
No, I don't want questions from Brian Ward. No, sorry.
Well, he just said, hey. So are you able to see these messages?
Say again, no, I haven't seen these messages. You know.
Okay, perfect. So, well, if you click on the top of your screen, you're gonna see like a chat box.
Oh, yep,
orange
yep.
box. Perfect. That orange box flashing.
Okay, I made his wife laugh. That's a start.
Absolutely.
And she's an accountant. Oh yeah. Yeah. What about the $100 million salary, or the fact that a valid salary has to be below infinity? Because sometimes you wonder, the greed of some people, wouldn't match this requirement.
Sorry, guys, you're not actually able to see these messages.
Yeah, the salary is none.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Not a number.
No. Depends, I'm French, the cheese country, so I take that for being a non-cheese.
So she's paid in cheese then. Okay. Yeah, that makes it better.
Okie doke.
Well,
all right.
perfect.
Chuck,
Right, so
you're next. You're ready?
Right. I don't have slides, so it's very easy for me. So yeah, basically, I just want to say that I love doing this. So if you have a meetup that you want someone to help host in, we just figured out how to do it at the same time streaming as well. So instead of limiting 100 people, we can also reach out to people just on Twitch. So yeah, I just want to add this. I'm happy to host Python Island again. It's a very good meetup. So if you have other meetups, or if you know a friend that's struggling to organize a virtual meetup, just let me know. My Twitter is @checkting_ho. So I will type it in the chat as well. So yeah, I'm happy to to support, because now all the meetups need to go online. I know everybody is struggling, so I want to help. So yeah, let me know.
Well, thank you very much, Chuck. Thank you very, very much to you, and thank you to Terminus DB as well for hosting us today. This wouldn't be possible without you guys, so thank you. And there you go, guys. If you have a meetup, just send her a Twitter handle. We're all over Twitter, Python Ireland's Twitter. Chuck is there, I'm there, and perfect. So if you would like to share, if you'd like to talk to her, just please send her a message on Twitter. Copying her Twitter into the chat right now. And we're
Can you hear me still? I'm still a panelist there.
Absolutely, Nick.
Yeah.
Yes, you're live now.
Oh,
I haven't kicked you
you've
out
heard
yet.
all the creepy stuff I was saying. Oops. All right. So Emmanuel, yeah, no kidding. Anytime you join in Dublin, so the policy here is that you'd have a social event with organizers, and we'd be more than happy to have you for a few points. This is valid for anyone, stepping forward to deliver a talk there. As you've seen, it only takes a few cells of a Jupyter Notebook to share a discovery you've made recently. And don't believe that everyone knows what you just discovered. The thing is, once you have discovered something, it's very precious information, how you picked up something you didn't know and how you have understood it, because this is the most valuable thing we can share. There is little, well, to share with the community about very niche expertise stuff. Most of the people, we are all focused on what we do for a living, and these events are all about, oh, I never knew about that. That could be interesting. And then it will become handy in 4 months' time, 6 months' time, 2 years' time, that you heard about it. So it's all about that. And I certainly hope this creepy virus shite will be over soon, and then we can be back on track on physical meetups. That's it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. We do hope that the COVID just goes away soon. Thank you very much for joining us, Nick. It was, yeah. How was for you to hand over the hosting of Python Ireland like this?
Well, okay. Let's be honest. I'm in the spirit.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I take that then. Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you. So then I'm just gonna go then and share my screen one more time with you guys just to say thank you again and to, well, finish everything. Well, thank you very much, Chuck, for your, is there anything you'd like to add? Anyone, like Chuck would like to add anything to your lightning talk as well? Are you happy to say goodbye?
Yeah, I'm all right. So hope to see you all soon.
Absolutely. Chuck is on Twitch as well, guys. The same channel that is sharing this meetup is sharing a bunch of other really cool stuff. She's doing a start course on Python every Sunday at 1 p.m. in UTC.
British summer time, so it's the same as Irish time.
Yeah. PST. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. So yes, it's a lot of fun. I hope you guys join it because it's a lot of fun. And thank you very much. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Chuck. Thank you very much.
Thank you for hosting, folks. Cheers.
Thank you. So yeah, and thank you guys for watching as well. Thank you to everyone that's stuck with us. Thank you to TerraDB for hosting this, and thank you for Chuck for facilitating all our meeting. And that's it then. See you on the 22nd, guys, and stay home. Just hope this thing just goes away very, very fast. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.
Bye.
Enjoy yourselves.